Chapter 1. The Project Blue Book Index, 1947 to 1952. Welcome to the archive. Tonight, we begin a systematic review of the official records concerning unidentified aerial phenomena, as documented by the United States Air Force. We are opening the files of Project Blue Book. Our focus for this session is the foundational period, beginning in the summer of 1947 and concluding with the formal reorganization in 1952. As we move through these records, observe the clinical nature of the reports. The language of the archive is the language of the bureaucrat. It is steady. It is methodical. It is designed to catalog the unknown within the confines of a filing cabinet. We begin with the catalyst. The date is June 24th, 1947. An aviator named Kenneth Arnold is flying a centralized aircraft 25 near Mount Rainier, Washington. The time is approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sky is clear. The air is still. Arnold reports 9 bright objects flying in a diagonal chain-like formation. He estimates their altitude at 9,500 feet. He calculates their speed as being at least 1,200 miles per hour. This is a speed that exceeds the capabilities of any known aircraft in 1947. He describes their movement as being like a saucer skipping across the water. This single observation, recorded in a cold military log, becomes the origin of the term flying saucer. In the weeks following this report, the frequency of entries in the log increases. Between June and July of 1947, over 800 additional sightings are reported across the United States. The military response is administrative. The Air Materiel Command at Wright Field, Ohio, begins to receive these reports. They are filed, stamped, and assigned a numerical sequence. On September 23, 1947, Lieutenant General Nathan Twining sends a memorandum to the Commanding General of the Army Air Forces. The memorandum is titled AMC Opinion Concerning Flying Discs. In this document, Twining states that the phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. He describes the objects as having a metallic or light-reflecting surface. He notes their lack of sound. He notes their circular or elliptical shape, flat on the bottom and domed on the top. This memorandum leads to the creation of Project Sign in December of 1947. Project Sign is the first official military investigation. Its task is to collect, evaluate, and distribute all information concerning sightings that could be considered a threat to national security. The filing system for Project Sign is rigorous. Each report must include the following data points: the date of the sighting, the time of the sighting, the duration of the sighting in minutes and seconds, the location of the observer, the direction of the wind, the condition of the sky, the estimated speed, the estimated size. In January of 1948, a significant entry is made in the log. This is the Mantell incident. On January 7th, 1948, at approximately 1:15 in the afternoon, the Kentucky Air National Guard receives reports of an unidentified object over Fort Knox. It is described as being circular and roughly 300 feet in diameter. Captain Thomas Mantell, flying a P-51 Mustang, is directed to pursue the object. At 22,000 feet, Mantell radios the tower. He states that the object is of tremendous size and appears to be metallic. He continues to climb. Communication is lost. Later that day, the wreckage of his aircraft is found. The official report attributes the crash to a lack of oxygen, suggesting Mantell blacked out while chasing a high-altitude weather balloon. However, in the classified margins of the index, the size and behavior of the object remain listed as anomalous. As 1948 progresses, the tone within Project Sign begins to shift. A document is prepared titled, "The Estimate of the Situation." This document suggests that the objects are extraterrestrial in origin. The report is sent up the chain of command to General Hoyt Vandenberg. The general rejects the report, citing a lack of physical evidence. He orders the document destroyed. The project is renamed. It becomes Project Grudge in February of 1949. The era of Project Grudge is marked by a strict policy of debunking. Every report is met with a standard explanation. High-altitude balloons, the planet Venus, temperature inversions, birds, reflections on cockpit glass. The goal is to reduce public anxiety and minimize the administrative burden on the Air Force. But the sightings do not stop. The logs continue to grow. By the year 1950, the index contains over 600 cases that remain labeled as unexplained. In September of 1951, an incident occurs at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. Radar operators detect a number of fast-moving targets that cannot be identified. The objects are tracked at speeds of over 700 miles per hour. They exhibit the ability to change direction instantaneously, a maneuver that would subject a pilot to extreme gravitational forces. Following this incident, Captain Edward Ruppel takes command of the investigation. He is a man of detail. He is a man of systems. He finds Project Grudge to be disorganized and insufficient. He insists on a new name and a new methodology. In March of 1952, the investigation is officially designated as Project Blue Book. Ruppelt creates a standardized questionnaire for observers. It is 16 pages long. He creates a coding system for every type of sighting. Code 100, astronomical. Code 200, aircraft. Code 300, balloon. Code 000, unknown. In the summer of 1952, the logs reach a breaking point. During the months of June and July, sightings are reported every day. The most significant entries occur on the nights of July 19th and July 26th. Radar at Washington National Airport detects a group of unidentified objects moving over the Capitol. The objects are tracked over the White House. They are tracked over the United States Capitol building. Air Force jets are scrambled from Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware. As the jets approach, the objects disappear from the radar screens. As soon as the jets leave the area, the objects reappear. This cat and mouse game continues for several hours. The official press conference that follows is the largest since the end of the Second World War. The Air Force attributes the radar blips to a weather phenomenon known as a temperature inversion, where a layer of warm air traps a layer of cold air, causing radar signals to bend and reflect off the ground. Within the private pages of the Blue Book Index, however, the radar operators remain skeptical. They point to the fact that the targets were tracked by 3 separate radar installations simultaneously. They point to the fact that the objects were seen visually by commercial airline pilots in the same location. The year 1952 ends with the formation of the Robertson Panel, a group of scientists organized by the Central Intelligence Agency. Their mission is to review the Blue Book files and determine if the phenomenon represents a threat. After 4 days of review, the panel concludes that there is no evidence of a direct threat to national security. They recommend that the Air Force begin a public relations campaign to strip the unidentified objects of their aura of mystery. They suggest the use of psychologists, advertising experts, and mass media to discourage public interest. Despite these recommendations, the Project Blue Book files remain open. The index continues to expand, year by year, file by file, box by box. The unknown is recorded, labeled, and placed in the dark. As we conclude this first chapter of the archive, The foundation has been laid. The bureaucracy of the unexplained is in place. Thousands of pages of testimony, radar logs, and witness statements are now resting in the archives, waiting for a closer look. The air is quiet. The records are still. We will continue our journey through the declassified trail in the next session. For now, let the weight of the paper and the silence of the ink guide you into a deep and restful sleep. Chapter 2. Project Sign and the Estimate of the Situation. We return to the records. The focus of this session is the period between January 1948 and February 1949. During these 14 months, the United States Air Force operated under the codename Project Sign. This was the first time the phenomenon was treated with high-level intelligence priority. The headquarters for this operation was located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Building 282 in Dayton, Ohio. Within these walls, a small team of engineers and intelligence officers attempted to find a physical, mechanical explanation for the objects being reported in the American skies. The filing system for Project Sign utilized a specialized document known as the Technical Intelligence Report. Each report was assigned a number. Each report was bound in a gray folder. The objective was to determine if these craft were secret weapons developed by a foreign power, or if they represented something else entirely. On January 22nd, 1948, a directive was issued to all Air Force commands. It stated that all information regarding unidentified aerial objects must be transmitted immediately to the Air Materiel Command. The directive emphasized the need for sketches, measurements, and descriptions of any propulsion systems observed. One of the most detailed entries in the early Project Sign log occurs on April 5th, 1948. At approximately 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 balloon observers at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico reported a strange sight. These were trained observers, accustomed to tracking high-altitude objects. They reported a silver, disc-shaped object moving at an altitude of 40,000 feet. They watched the object through a theodolite, a precision optical instrument used for surveying. The log entry for this day notes that the object executed a 360-degree turn in less than 30 seconds. At that altitude and speed, such a turn would require a level of structural integrity and pilot restraint far beyond the limits of 1948 technology. The observers recorded the details in a flat, unemotional script. They noted the lack of a vapor trail. They noted the absence of an engine hum. They noted the way the sun reflected off the metallic skin of the craft. As the spring of 1948 turned to summer, the personnel of Project Sign began to form a hypothesis. They noticed a pattern in the reports. The objects were often seen near sensitive military installations. They were seen near nuclear research facilities. They were seen near rocket testing grounds. This led to the most controversial document in the history of the archive. It is known as the Estimate of the Situation. In the language of military intelligence, an estimate is a formal conclusion based on the available data. By August of 1948, the lead investigators of Project Sign had written a top-secret report concluding that the objects were likely interplanetary in origin. The document argued that since the craft showed no evidence of being American or Soviet technology, and since they displayed flight characteristics that defied the known laws of aerodynamics, the most logical explanation was that they originated from outside the Earth's atmosphere. The estimate of the situation was sent through the chain of command to the Pentagon. It reached the desk of General Hoyt Vandenberg, the Air Force Chief of Staff. The general reviewed the findings. He looked at the lists of sightings. He looked at the radar data. He looked at the sketches of the silver discs. General Vandenberg rejected the report. He stated that the estimate of the situation lacked physical proof. He argued that without a captured craft or a piece of wreckage, the claim of interplanetary origin was too speculative for a formal military document. He ordered the report to be declassified and then burned. All copies were supposed to be destroyed. However, rumors of the document's contents persisted within the intelligence community for decades, becoming a foundational piece of the narrative we study tonight. Following the rejection of the estimate, the atmosphere inside Project Sign changed. The officers who believed the phenomenon was extraordinary were reassigned. The focus shifted back to terrestrial explanations. On July 24th, 1948, at 2:45 in the morning, another significant report was entered into the log. This is known as the Childs-Whitted case. Two commercial pilots, Clarence Childs and John Whitted, were flying a Douglas DC-3 over Montgomery, Alabama. They reported a wingless aircraft, shaped like a cigar, glowing with a dull red light. They stated the craft had 2 rows of windows. It passed their plane at a high rate of speed, creating a tremendous wake of air that rocked the DC-3. The pilots reported that the craft emitted a flame from its rear that extended for 50 feet. The Project Sign investigation into this case was exhaustive. They checked the flight logs of every military and civilian aircraft in the region. They checked the schedules of weather balloon launches. They checked for meteor activity. The conclusion in the file remains marked as unidentified. By late 1948, the tension between the investigators and the high-ranking generals resulted in the closure of Project Sign. The final report was issued in early 1949. It concluded that while the sightings were real, there was not enough evidence to prove they were a threat or that they were extraterrestrial. The project was downgraded. Its budget was cut. Its mission was changed from investigation to simple data collection. On February 11th, 1949, Project Sign was officially terminated. It was replaced by Project Grudge. The era of the serious, open-minded inquiry had ended. The era of the bureaucratic brush-off had begun. The gray folders were moved to a different drawer. The stamps were changed, but the sightings continued. As we close this chapter of the archive, we reflect on the thousands of man-hours spent by officers in the late 1940s, sitting at metal desks under fluorescent lights, trying to map the unmappable. The paper grows thicker. The mysteries grow older. The archives are quiet now. The logs are closed for the night. Rest now, as the weight of these historical records fades into the background. Chapter 3. MKUltra, the logistics of Subproject 68. We shift our focus from the skies to the institutional landscape of the 1950s. In April of 1953, the Central Intelligence Agency established a program known as MKUltra. While the project is often discussed in the context of its goals, tonight we look at the project through its administrative records, the logistics of its subprojects, specifically Subproject 68. The records for Subproject 68 are a collection of financial vouchers, supply orders, and architectural descriptions. This subproject was based at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. As we review these files, observe the cold, professional tone used to describe the modification of physical spaces. The institute was housed in a mansion known as Ravenscrag, located on a hill overlooking the city. The administrative logs describe the conversion of the basement into a series of specialized rooms. We look at the technical specifications for these modifications. Voucher number 4021 details the purchase of soundproofing materials. The logs describe the installation of heavy acoustic tiling on the walls and ceilings of the isolation chambers. The goal was total silence. The records list the dimensions of these rooms as being 8 feet by 10 feet. The doors were reinforced with heavy steel plating and fitted with small observation ports made of 3-layered tempered glass. The electrical logs for Subproject 68 are particularly detailed. They describe the installation of a grid of speakers within the walls. The wiring was hidden behind the acoustic panels. These speakers were connected to a central control room equipped with Ampex magnetic tape recorders. The records show an order for 6,000 feet of high-density magnetic tape, intended for the continuous playback of recorded messages. The logs also inventory the furniture within these isolation units. Each room contained a standard hospital bed, a small metal table, and a single chair. The lighting was controlled remotely from the hallway. The records describe the installation of rheostat switches, allowing the brightness to be adjusted from total darkness to a harsh, high-intensity glare. In the financial ledgers, we find a series of payments made to local contractors for the installation of a specialized ventilation system. This system was designed to be completely silent, ensuring that the occupant of the room would have no auditory reference to the outside world. The air filters were changed on a strict 14-day cycle. The records for these filter changes are signed and dated with bureaucratic precision. One of the most extensive sections of the archive concerns the procurement of equipment for the sleep room. This was a long-term observation ward. The logs describe the purchase of 32 specialized beds with side railings. They list the acquisition of electroconvulsive therapy units, referred to in the documents as Model 505 signal generators. The technical manuals for these machines are filed alongside the project's monthly progress reports. The personnel files for Subproject 68 list a staff of nurses, orderlies, and research assistants. Their schedules were organized into 3 8-hour shifts to ensure 24-hour monitoring of the facility. Each shift change required the completion of a logbook entry, noting the temperature of the rooms, the status of the intercom system, and the functionality of the recording equipment. The budget for Subproject 68 was processed through a series of front organizations to maintain the top-secret classification. The funds were funneled through the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. The ledgers show regular payments for mundane items, laundry services for hospital linens, industrial-sized containers of liquid nutrition, and vast quantities of sodium, amidal, and other chemical compounds. The chemical inventory is recorded with the same dryness as a grocery list. Each substance is listed by its weight in grams or its volume in milliliters. The logs track the movement of these substances from the pharmacy storage lockers to the laboratory benches. In 1959, a memo was filed regarding the environmental control systems of the Institute. The memo discusses the need for a more efficient way to monitor multiple rooms from a single station. This led to the installation of early closed-circuit television cameras. The records describe the cameras as being large, heat-generating units that required their own cooling fans. The technical diagrams for the camera mounts are included in the appendix of the report. As we move through the 1960s, the records for Subproject 68 begin to taper off. The administrative focus shifts to the archiving of data and the decommissioning of certain equipment. In 1964, an inventory was taken of all remaining magnetic tapes. Over 1,000 hours of recorded audio were logged, labeled, and placed into storage crates. The final vouchers for the project concern the repainting of the basement rooms. The acoustic tiles were removed, the speakers were disconnected. The heavy steel doors were replaced with standard wooden ones. The archive concludes with a final audit of the petty cash fund, showing a remaining balance of $12.45. The institution remains, but the logs are closed. The rooms have been repurposed, the wiring has been pulled, and the magnetic tapes have long since been destroyed. Only the paper trail remains a cold, clinical record of a silent basement on a hill. The Institute is quiet now. The records are filed away. You are safe within the present moment, far removed from the cold bureaucracy of the past. Let the silence of the archive settle over you. Chapter 4. Project Stargate. The SRI logbooks. We move into the 1970s and 80s. Our focus shifts to the Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park, California, and later to Fort Meade, Maryland. Here, the United States government conducted a program known as Project Stargate. It was a study into remote viewing, the ability to perceive distant locations using only the mind. While the concept is extraordinary, the daily reality of the project was deeply administrative. The records are a mountain of standardized forms, session logs, and geographic coordinates. As we review these files, observe the repetition, observe the focus on protocol. A typical session began in a room designated as the Remote Viewing Suite. The logbooks described this room as being plain, painted in a neutral, off-white color. It contained 2 comfortable chairs, a small table, and a high-quality audio recorder. There were no windows. The lighting was dimmed to a specific level, measured in foot candles to ensure consistency across every trial. The process began with the selection of a target. In the early days of the program, the targets were chosen using a random number generator. The coordinates, latitude and longitude, were written on a 3x5 index card. This card was placed inside a double-wrapped manila envelope and sealed with wax. The session log for October 14th, 1983, provides a clear example of the routine. The viewer is identified only by a numerical code, Viewer 001. The monitor, the person guiding the session, is identified as Monitor 102. The log begins with a timestamp, 10:30 in the morning. The monitor reads the coordinates aloud, 55 degrees, 45 minutes north, 37 degrees, 37 minutes east. The viewer sits in silence for several minutes. The only sound in the room is the low hum of the air conditioning system and the slight scratching of a pen on a clipboard. The viewer begins to describe shapes, a long gray structure, a series of vertical lines, a sense of cold wind. The monitor does not lead the viewer. They simply record the descriptions on a standardized form known as a session summary sheet. This form includes boxes for time of onset, physical sensations, sketches, and perceived temperature. As we look through the archive, we see hundreds of these sketches. They are simple drawings, rectangles representing buildings, circles representing fuel tanks, jagged lines representing mountain ranges. Each sketch is signed by the viewer and the monitor. Each one is stamped with a classification marking, secret, not releasable to foreign nationals. In 1984, the project moved toward coordinate remote viewing. This required a strict adherence to a 6-stage protocol. Each stage had its own set of rules and its own paperwork. Stage 1. The viewer records the major gestalt, or the primary feeling of the site. Stage 2. The viewer records sensory data colors, smells, and textures. Stage 3. The viewer creates a formal sketch of the site's dimensions. The logs show that thousands of these sessions were conducted. Many of them were training targets involving mundane locations. The Eiffel Tower, the Pentagon, a hydroelectric dam in Siberia, a lonely lighthouse on the coast of Maine. The repetition was intended to build the viewer's signal-to-noise ratio. The financial records for Project Stargate are filed under a variety of code names: Grill Flame, Center Lane, and Sunstreak. The budget ledgers show payments for travel to specialized conferences, the purchase of topographic maps, and the maintenance of the secure facility at Fort Meade. The records list the procurement of high-speed photography equipment used to verify the viewer's descriptions against actual satellite imagery. One section of the logbook is dedicated to feedback loops. After a session was completed, the viewer was often shown a photograph of the actual target. The logs record the viewer's reaction to the feedback. They record the percentage of accuracy as determined by an independent evaluator. These evaluations are filled with statistical tables showing mean scores and standard deviations. The administrative burden of Project Stargate was significant. Every session generated at least 20 pages of documentation. These pages had to be cross-referenced, indexed by target type, and stored in fireproof cabinets. The records show that the staff included 2 full-time secretaries whose primary job was the filing and retrieval of these psychic logs. As we move into the early 1990s, the tone of the logs becomes more defensive. The program was under constant review by external committees. The records include long technical memos justifying the project's existence. They discuss the cost per intelligence packet compared to traditional satellite surveillance. In 1995, the CIA commissioned a final evaluation of the program. The report concluded that while some interesting results had been observed, the data was too inconsistent for military operations. Project Stargate was officially closed on June 30th, 1995. The archive ends with a final inventory of the Fort Meade office. The log lists the chairs, the tables, the tape recorders, and the thousands of envelopes containing coordinates. The rooms were repainted. The files were moved to a long-term storage facility in Maryland. The monitors are gone. The viewers have returned to private life. The coordinates remain on the paper, pointing to locations across the globe that were once visited in the silence of an off-white room. The session is over. The recorder is turned off. The coordinates are filed away. You are back in your own space now, surrounded by the quiet of the night. Chapter 5. Operation Paperclip. The Personnel Dossiers. We turn our attention to the period immediately following the Second World War. Between 1945 and 1959, the United States government conducted a massive logistical operation known as Operation Paperclip. The objective was the transfer of scientific and technical expertise from Germany to the United States. Tonight, we review the archive not for its history, but for its data. The records of Operation Paperclip are primarily composed of personnel dossiers, immigration forms, and equipment inventories. As we move through these files, listen to the rhythm of the names, the dates, and the technical specifications of the machinery. The process began at a processing center in Landshut, Germany. Each scientist was assigned a folder. A paperclip was attached to the top of the file to signify that the individual had been cleared for transport to the United States. The dossiers follow a strict biographical template. We look at the entry for Werner von Braun, dated September 20th, 1945. Place of birth, Worsitz, Germany. Date of birth, March 23rd, 1912. Specialization, liquid-fueled rocketry and aerodynamic engineering. The records describe the physical transfer of these individuals across the Atlantic Ocean. Many were transported on the United States Army transport ship, the Argentina. The ship's manifest is a long, repetitive list of names and cabin assignments. Each entry includes the individual's weight, the number of crates they were permitted to bring, and their final destination in the United States. Most were sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, or to the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. The logs for Fort Bliss describe the conversion of former hospital barracks into living quarters for the scientists and their families. The records list the furniture issued to each room: 2 wooden desks, 1 floor lamp, 4 chairs, 1 shelving unit for technical manuals. The technical inventory of Operation Paperclip is vast. It covers the crates of equipment shipped alongside the personnel. We look at the manifest for the V2 research material, arriving at the White Sands Proving Grounds in New Mexico. Item number 108. 1 liquid oxygen pump, centrifugal type. Item number 109. 2 combustion chamber housings, steel alloy. Item number 110. 1 set of gyroscopic stabilizers, precision calibrated. Item number 111. 342 pages of blueprints for the A4 rocket series. The logs describe the meticulous process of translating these blueprints. The Air Material Command employed a fleet of translators who worked in 8-hour shifts. The records track their progress page by page. They list the technical terms for turbine blades, fuel injectors, and guidance fins. The repetition of these mechanical terms creates a steady, rhythmic flow of information. At the Redstone Arsenal, the records focus on the development of the Jupiter C rocket. The logs for 1956 are filled with static test data. We read the numbers from a test conducted on March 14th. Fuel pressure, 2,400 pounds per square inch. Oxidizer flow rate, 180 gallons per second. Burn duration, 155 seconds. Total thrust, 78,000 pounds. The names in the archive continue to repeat. Kurt Davis, Arthur Rudolph, Hubertus Strughold. Each name is accompanied by a list of their specialized contributions. Doctor. Strughold's files focus on the logistics of space medicine. They list the equipment needed for a high-altitude pressurized cabin, oxygen regulators, carbon dioxide scrubbers, pressure suits made of layered nylon and rubber. The financial ledgers for Operation Paperclip track the salaries paid to the scientists under their new American contracts. The payments were processed through the Department of the Army. Each voucher lists the base pay, the housing allowance, and the reimbursement for relocation of laboratory instruments. In the late 1950s, the focus of the archive shifts as the scientists were integrated into the newly formed National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA. The Paperclip dossiers were eventually moved from active military files to the National Archives. The folders are now stored in acid-free boxes. Each box is numbered. Each box is tracked in a central database. The blue ink of the signatures has faded slightly over the decades, but the names and the lists of machinery remain clear. The transfer is complete. The engines have been tested. The blueprints have been filed. The scientists have long since finished their work. Only the administrative record remains a quiet, dusty inventory of a technological migration. The laboratory is dark now. The filing cabinets are locked. The sound of the wind across the Texas desert is the only sound remaining in the archive. Chapter 6. Project Horizon, the Lunar Base Blueprint. We move now to the year 1959. In June of that year, the United States Army presented a secret study titled Project Horizon. This was a blueprint for the establishment of a permanent lunar outpost. Tonight, we look at the logistics of this base, not as a feat of exploration, but as a project of civil engineering and resource management. The records for Project Horizon are contained in 4 thick volumes. As we open Volume 1, we are greeted by the architectural requirements of a vacuum environment. The language is clinical. The measurements are precise. The site for the base was selected as the northern part of the Mare Imbrium, near the crater Aristillus. The logs describe the physical characteristics of this location. The soil is composed of fine, basaltic dust. The temperature fluctuations are extreme, ranging from 250 degrees Fahrenheit in the sun to minus 250 degrees in the shade. The initial construction phase required the shipment of 75 Saturn-owned rockets. The manifest for these launches is recorded in a long chronological table. Each rocket was assigned a specific cargo load. Rockets 1 through 10 carried the basic structural elements. These were cylindrical metal tanks, 10 feet in diameter and 20 feet in length. The logs describe the process of burying these tanks under 3 feet of lunar soil to provide protection against cosmic radiation and micrometeorites. We look at the technical specifications for the living quarters. Each cylinder was designed to house 2 personnel. The interior walls were lined with a multi-layered insulation blanket composed of aluminum foil and fiberglass. The records list the furniture for each unit: 2 folding bunks, 1 wall-mounted desk, 1 small storage locker for personal effects, 1 communication terminal. Volume 2 of the report focuses on the environmental control systems. This is a repetitive list of mechanical requirements for maintaining a breathable atmosphere. Oxygen storage: 2 spherical tanks, 5 feet in diameter, constructed of high-strength titanium. Nitrogen supply: 4,000 pounds of pressurized liquid nitrogen for atmospheric balancing. Carbon dioxide scrubbers, lithium hydroxide canisters, replaced on an 8-hour rotation, humidity control, a centrifugal water separator designed to operate in low gravity. The logs detail the power requirements for the base. The primary source was a nuclear reactor, buried in a separate crater at a distance of 500 yards from the main living quarters. The records list the dimensions of the shielding: 5 feet of lead-lined concrete. The electrical grid was composed of buried copper cables, insulated with high-temperature silicone. The food inventory for Project Horizon is listed with bureaucratic dryness. The report specifies a diet of 3,000 calories per person per day. Item 1. Dehydrated meat and vegetable blocks, vacuum, sealed in plastic film. Item 2. Concentrated fruit juices in squeeze tubes. Item 3. High-protein biscuits, fortified with vitamins and minerals. The logs calculate the total weight of food required for a 12-man crew for 1 year as exactly 43,800 pounds. Volume 3 describes the construction equipment. The most detailed entry is for the lunar construction vehicle. This was a specialized tractor with wide, segmented metal wheels designed to navigate the soft lunar dust. The logs list the vehicle's weight as 2,000 pounds on Earth, but only 333 pounds on the Moon. It was equipped with a front-mounted scoop for moving lunar soil and a rear-mounted crane for positioning the habitat cylinders. The communication logs describe the link between the lunar base and the Earth. The primary antenna was a parabolic dish, 10 feet in diameter, mounted on a sun-tracking pedestal. The records list the frequencies to be used: 2,250 megahertz for voice transmission and 1,500 megahertz for telemetry data. The final volume of Project Horizon outlines the long-term expansion of the base. It describes the addition of a laboratory module, a medical clinic, and a hydroponic garden for the experimental growth of algae. The diagrams for these additions are drawn with clean, straight lines, labeled with part numbers and material codes. As we reach the end of the 1959 report, the project remains on paper. The rockets were never launched. The cylinders were never buried. The lunar dust remains undisturbed in the mare imbrium. The blueprints are rolled up. The technical manuals are placed back in their boxes. The vast, silent plains of the Moon remain empty, bathed in the soft glow of the Earth. Let the measurements of the oxygen tanks and the weight of the metal wheels drift into the distance as you fall into a deep, weightless sleep. Chapter 7. The Robertson Panel Minutes, 1953. We move back to the early days of 1953. The date is January 14th. The location is a secure, windowless conference room in Washington, District of Columbia. We are reviewing the formal minutes of the Scientific Advisory Panel on Unidentified Flying Objects, commonly known as the Robertson Panel. The records for this 4-day meeting are characterized by a strict adherence to parliamentary procedure. As we open the log, we observe the list of attendees. The chairman is Dr. Howard Percy Robertson, a physicist from the California Institute of Technology. The panel members include Dr. Luis Alvarez, a physicist from the University of California, Dr. Lloyd Berkner, an expert in geophysics, Dr. Samuel Goudsmit, a nuclear physicist from the Brookhaven National Laboratory, and Dr. Thornton Page, an astronomer from the University of Chicago. The minutes begin with the call to order at 9:30 in the morning. The first order of business is the review of the administrative history of Project Blue Book. Captain Edward Ruppelt is called to testify. The logs record his testimony in a flat, transcribed format. He describes the filing system. He describes the increase in report volume. He describes the statistical breakdown of the cases. The panel spends the first 8 hours of the meeting reviewing selected film footage and photographic evidence. The logs describe the room as being darkened for the projection of 16mm film. Case number 1, the Tremonton, Utah film, in 1952. The minutes record the panel's technical discussion regarding the light reflecting properties of seagulls. They discuss the angle of the sun. They discuss the shutter speed of the camera. They discuss the distance of the objects from the lens. Case number 2, the Great Falls, Montana film, 1950. The panel reviews the witness testimony of Nicholas Mariana. They discuss the possibility of the objects being reflections from 2 F-94 jet interceptors. The logs record the repetitive analysis of flight schedules and atmospheric conditions. By the second day, January 15th, the tone of the minutes becomes increasingly analytical. The panel members begin to discuss the concept of national security, not in terms of an invasion, but in terms of communication clogging. Dr. Robertson moves that the panel focus on the risk of the reports themselves. The minutes record his argument. The sheer volume of UFO reports is overwhelming the military's communication channels. If an actual enemy attack were to occur, the system might be too busy processing saucer sightings to recognize the real threat. This is recorded in the logs as the vulnerability of the reporting system. The third day is dedicated to the educational program. The minutes list the recommendations for debunking. The panel suggests the use of the mass media to strip the unidentified objects of their special status. They list specific organizations to involve the Walt Disney Studios, amateur astronomers, and psychologists. We look at the list of proposed techniques for reducing public interest. 1. The use of television programs to explain sightings as natural phenomena. 2. The monitoring of private UFO civilian groups. 3. The training of military personnel in the identification of astronomical and meteorological anomalies. The minutes record a series of formal votes. Motion: that the panel find no evidence of a direct physical threat to the United States. Vote: 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Motion: that the Air Force embark on a program to de-emphasize the mystery of unidentified flying objects. Vote: 5 in favor, 0 opposed. The fourth and final day, January 17th, is dedicated to the drafting of the final report. The logs describe the process of wordsmithing the conclusions. The panel members debate the use of the word anomalous versus unexplained. They decide on unexplained, as it implies a temporary lack of data rather than a permanent mystery. The meeting is adjourned at 4:45 in the afternoon. The records show the collection of all classified documents. The room is swept for security. The members are dismissed to their various universities and laboratories. The Robertson panel report was issued as a top-secret document. It remained classified for several years. When it was finally released, much of the text was redacted, but in the original minutes, the language is clear. It is the language of a committee. It is the language of a board of directors. It is steady, academic, and detached. The microphones are turned off. The chairs are pushed back. The water glasses are emptied. The scientific experts have finished their assessment. The unknown has been categorized as a psychological problem to be managed. The conference room is empty now. The lights have been dimmed. The paperwork is filed in the depths of the Pentagon archives. Chapter 8. Project Blue Room and Hangar 18 Inventory. We move now to the logistics of long-term storage. Within the records of the Air Force and the Department of Defense, there are frequent references to the management of sensitive artifacts. The most famous of these locations is Hangar 18, located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Specifically, we look at the records of Project Blue Room, the administrative effort to catalog and preserve non-standard materials. Tonight, we review the archive as if it were a warehouse ledger. We are interested in the shelving, the crates, and the environmental controls. The language is the language of a logistics officer. Hangar 18 is described in the facilities log as a large steel frame structure. The interior dimensions are listed as 200 feet in length and 150 feet in width. The floor is reinforced concrete, treated with a gray epoxy coating to prevent the buildup of dust. The ceiling height is 45 feet, allowing for the movement of heavy-lift gantry cranes. The inventory system for Project Blue Room utilizes a standardized alphanumeric code. Each item is assigned a material ID tag. We look at the logs for Section 4, the anomalous metal storage area. The shelving units in Section 4 are constructed of industrial-grade stainless steel. Each shelf is rated for a load capacity of 5,000 pounds. The logs record the placement of crates. Crate number: Delta 679er. Weight: 412 pounds. Contents: recovered debris from the 1947 New Mexico event. Storage temperature: exactly 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity level: 35%. The logs describe the packaging materials used to prevent oxidation. The artifacts are wrapped in layers of mylar film and placed inside vacuum-sealed containers made of lead-lined plastic. Each container is labeled with the date of recovery and the name of the commanding officer who authorized the transfer. We move to the propulsion components section. The records list the acquisition of 3 circular objects, approximately 4 feet in diameter. They are identified in the ledger as possible power distribution units. The technical notes describe the surface of these objects as being smooth, with no visible seams or fasteners. The inventory log lists the various tests conducted on the surface: ultrasonic thickness testing, X-ray diffraction, and magnetic resonance scans. The results of these tests are recorded in long numerical tables. Density: 3.4 grams per cubic centimeter. Conductivity: non-conductive at room temperature. Thermal expansion coefficient: 0.000004 per degree Celsius. The environmental logs for Hangar 18 are updated every 4 hours. A technician walks through the facility with a clipboard, checking the gauges on the climate control system. The records for July 14, 1962, show a consistent environment. The technician notes the functionality of the air filtration system, which utilizes high-efficiency particulate air, or HEPA filters, to ensure the room remains a clean room level 10,000. The lighting in the storage area is provided by overhead fluorescent fixtures, filtered to remove ultraviolet rays. The logs record the replacement schedule for these bulbs to ensure that no light-sensitive materials are degraded over time. In the back of the ledger, we find the access logs. This is a list of individuals who have entered the facility. Each entry includes the person's name, their security clearance level, the time of entry, and the time of exit. Major Robert Henderson. Clearance. Top secret. Entry 0800. Exit 0915. Purpose: visual inspection of crate Delta 679er. The records also describe the security protocols for the perimeter of the hangar. There are 2 layers of chain-link fencing, topped with concertina wire. The logs record the frequency of the guard patrols. Every 30 minutes, 24 hours a day. The gate logs record the license plate numbers of every military vehicle that enters the restricted zone. The administrative trail for Project Blue Room suggests a transition in the late 1960s. The records indicate that many of the crates were prepared for off-site transfer. The manifest lists the destination only as a numerical coordinate or a secondary base code. The gantry cranes were used to load the lead line containers onto flatbed trucks, which departed in the early morning hours. The inventory remains on the pages. The crate numbers are still there. The temperature logs continue in their steady, unchanging rhythm. The facility is a place of stillness, where the remnants of the unknown are treated with the same care as a standard airplane part. The warehouse is quiet now. The technician has finished the rounds. The gray concrete floor is clean. The stainless steel shelves hold their heavy burdens in the dim, filtered light. Relax as you let the lists of crate numbers and the steady readings of the humidity gauges fade away. Chapter 9. The Aztec UFO Crash. The Steinman Documents. We move to the year 1948, specifically to the month of March, in the high desert of New Mexico. We are reviewing the recovery protocols documented in the Steinman Papers, which detail the administrative and logistical response to a reported crash near the town of Aztec. Tonight, we look at this event through the lens of a military standard operating procedure, or SOP. The recovery of an unidentified craft is, at its core, a problem of site containment, material transport, and personnel management. The records are a sequence of checkboxes and logistical directives. The SOP for a special recovery begins with the establishment of a 3-tier perimeter. The logs describe the physical requirements for this containment. Tier 1, the exclusion zone, a 500-yard radius around the center of the site. Access is restricted to specialized recovery teams wearing Level A protective suits. Tier 2, the support zone, a 1-mile radius containing the command tent, the decontamination station, and the mobile laboratory. Tier 3, the outer perimeter, a 5-mile radius controlled by military police to redirect civilian traffic and maintain security. The records for the Aztec site describe the deployment of the 822nd Red Horse Civil Engineering Squadron. Their task was the construction of a temporary landing strip and a road capable of supporting heavy-duty transport vehicles. The logs list the equipment used: 2 D7 bulldozers, 1 motorized grader, and 3 10-ton flatbed trucks. We look at the material recovery log. This is a step-by-step inventory of the site cleanup. Step 1. Photographic documentation. Every fragment of debris is assigned a numerical marker. The logs record the camera settings used for each photograph: shutter speed of 1 to 1/100th of a second, aperture of f11, using 36mm black and white film. Step 2. Radiological survey. Technicians using Geiger counters move across the site in a grid pattern. The readings are recorded in a notebook, column by column. 0.05 milliroentgens per hour, 0.04 milliroentgens per hour. The numbers are steady and low. Step 3. Manual collection. Smaller fragments are placed in polyethylene bags and sealed with lead-lined tape. The documents describe the craft itself as a disc-shaped object, approximately 100 feet in diameter. However, the logs focus on the mechanical challenge of moving it. The records list the specifications for the heavy-lift cranes brought in from the Kirtland Air Force Base. They detail the use of specialized nylon slings, each with a braking strength of 50,000 pounds, to lift the primary structure onto a lowboy trailer. The transport log is a chronological record of the movement from Aztec to a secure military facility. The convoy moved only at night at a speed of 25 miles per hour. The logs record the fuel consumption of the transport trucks and the location of every scheduled stop for maintenance and security checks. One section of the archive is dedicated to the environmental remediation of the site. After the craft was removed, the military was required to restore the desert floor to its original state. The logs describe the process of raking the sand to remove tire tracks and the planting of native desert scrub to hide the location of the temporary landing strip. The administrative trail for the Aztec recovery concludes with the Personnel Non-Disclosure Index. This is a list of every soldier and civilian who is present at the site. Each name is followed by a signature, acknowledging the receipt of a security briefing and the understanding of the penalties for violating the National Security Act. The list of names is long and repetitive. Corporal James Miller, Sergeant Robert Taylor, Private First Class William Anderson. Each individual is assigned a tracking number. Each individual is cleared for departure from the zone. The files are now closed. The desert wind has long since covered the tracks of the bulldozers. The site near Aztec is once again a silent expanse of sagebrush and sand. The artifacts are in crates, the crates are in trucks, and the trucks have reached their destination. The recovery is complete. The SOP has been followed, and the boxes are checked. Chapter 10. The Summary of Classified Directives. We conclude our review of the archive by examining the framework that holds it all together. This is the study of classification itself. Every document we have reviewed tonight exists within a hierarchy of secrecy, governed by executive orders and Department of Defense directives. As we move through these final definitions, observe the technical and repetitive nature of the language. This is the language of the gatekeeper. This is the language of the ledger. We begin with the basic definitions of classification levels, as established by Executive Order 10,290. Level 1. Confidential. This is the base level of the hierarchy. It is applied to information whose unauthorized disclosure could be prejudicial to the defense interests of the nation. The logbook for confidential materials is bound in blue. Each page must be accounted for during the annual audit. Level 2. Secret. This level is applied to information whose unauthorized disclosure could cause serious damage to national security. The records for secret materials are bound in red. Access requires a background investigation and a verified need to know. The logs track the movement of these folders from the safe to the desk and back to the safe, with time-stamped signatures for every minute of possession. Level 3. Top Secret. This is the highest standard of the 3-tier system. It is applied to information whose disclosure could cause exceptionally grave damage. The records are kept in GSA-approved Class 5 security containers. The locks are changed every 6 months. The logs for these containers record every individual who has the combination, the date the combination was last changed, and the name of the officer who performed the reset. Beyond these levels, we enter the realm of compartmentalization. This is the system of the code word. Information is not just classified by its level, but by its bucket. You may have a top-secret clearance, but if you do not have the code word for a specific project, the file remains closed to you. The archive lists these protocols as sensitive compartmented information, or SCI. The administrative rules for SCI are documented in the Director of Central Intelligence Directives. We review the physical requirements for a SCIF, or Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility. A SCIF must have walls that extend from the true floor to the true ceiling. They must be reinforced with expanded metal foil to prevent electronic eavesdropping. The logs describe the acoustic protection levels. The ventilation ducts must be fitted with non-conductive man bars to prevent physical entry. The records for the SCIF inspection are updated monthly, checking for cracks in the seals and the functionality of the alarm sensors. We now look at the classification markings. These are the stamps found at the top and bottom of every page. NOFORN stands for Not Releasable to Foreign Nationals. ORCON stands for Originator Controlled. PROPIN stands for Proprietary Information Involved. The logs describe the process of derivative classification. This is the rule that states, if you take a sentence from a top-secret document and put it into a new document, the new document also becomes top-secret. This creates a geometric expansion of the archive. One secret creates 10 pages. 10 pages create 100 files. 100 files create a mountain of paper. Finally, we review the declassification schedule. Most documents are assigned a date for automatic declassification, usually 25 years from the date of creation. However, certain files are marked with Exemption Category 1. This means they are exempt from automatic release because they concern weapons of mass destruction, cryptology, or extraterrestrial intelligence. The logs for these exemptions are the longest in the archive. They list the reason for the extension. They list the date of the next review. They list the authority of the original classifier. The dates stretch into the future. 1999, 2009, 2024, 2049. The bureaucracy is self-sustaining. It is a closed loop of definitions and directives. It is a language that describes itself forever. The archive is now complete. The 10 chapters have been read. The names have been logged. The machinery has been inventoried. The coordinates have been filed. And the secrets have been defined and secured within their proper folders. The lights in the record room are being turned off, one by one. The heavy steel doors are swinging shut. The locks are turning. The building is quiet. The paper is still. The ink is dry. You have followed the trail to the end. There are no more files to review. There are no more boxes to open. You are in a place of total administrative calm. You are in a place of deep, classified rest. Close your eyes. Let the hierarchy of the archive fade. Let the definitions of the gatekeepers disappear. You are drifting now, beyond the reach of the logs and the ledgers, into a deep and final sleep.